Good morning. It's 7:48, 12 away from the top of the hour. Mr. Bob Pollock is with us this morning. You can give Bob a call at 479-1160 or 349-WCCS. It's 349-9227. And ask him your questions about lawns and gardens and flowers and such. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
It's wonderful. Isn't it nice to have some sunshine out there?
To look outside and see that, yeah. There are some garden plants that come up every year. I'm thinking specifically about strawberries, and those plants might be a little bit delayed this year. We might be getting June strawberries rather than late May strawberries, huh?
That could be the case.
Or July strawberries, for that matter.
I don't think it'll be that late, but it could be.
Yeah, you're a
could
strawberry.
Could be just a little later.
You're a strawberry farmer.
They
so
were. They're a little slow to get going this year.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, at least a week to a week and a half behind schedule, but we could make that up if we get some warmer weather and sunny weather. As long as we still have moisture in the ground, along with those other two things, we could make that up between now and then.
You talk a lot about the energy in plants and how seasonally that energy gets adjusted, and at some point a plant knows that it's time to start concentrating its energy in ways that it hasn't so far. When you have a spring such as this, which really hasn't begun yet, how does the plant know to adjust there? Does it go to Penn State Extension and look on the website and, and say, oh, okay, it's time for me to start.
I should be doing something now.
I should be pulling in the energy from the blooms and concentrating on the stalk.
But, yeah, this weather is really, things started to come out last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Some buds opened up and some little leaves emerged, and things have pretty much sat there almost all week. Not much movement there, but I think in the next few days, if things keep on this trend, we're going to see a lot of change. A lot more of those will come out and start to develop. You might see people mowing their yards.
Yeah, well, I've heard of a few that have already mowed, but then you start to think back. There was a time when we were mowing our lawns in late March. And we're not even thinking about that just yet.
So it's really those plants adjust based on those temperatures, the moisture and the temperatures that are, especially that soil temperature is important this time of year. Mm-hmm. So if we have weather that allows that soil to warm up faster, then that will move along the plant activity, and we'll see more growth. This year it stayed cold and wet, and so we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But it's slowly going to make its way.
People, of course, they do plan for what they'd like to do in their flower beds. And they've got a little more time to plan this year.
Or they may have just, it's been cold and snowy and all that, and they've just put it off. Well,
all that being the case, what are some things that folks ought to be doing right now with their flower beds if they're certainly not putting their plants out yet?
No, depending on what you're trying to plant and what stage of growth. If it's still a dormant plant, if you're trying to move plants, you could still do that yet, but it needs to be done. Once we start to get much growth, then we stress the plant more by trying to move it once it's growing. Unless we can really kind of baby it along a little bit, it's best to do that when they're still dormant. Then we reduce the risk of causing too much stress on that plant and having it fail. And cutting off those roots. Invariably, if you're going to dig a plant and move it, you're going to remove some of the root system, and we try to minimize that as much as possible. That's why it's very helpful to do that when the plant doesn't have that foliage on there that it needs to have moisture in, and then the other functions that need to happen while it's growing.
Which is a lot like what you were talking about last week when we were discussing moving shrubs.
Yes. Same thing.
Same concept.
Yeah, so we're really coming towards the end of that time frame at this point. But, you got to gauge that based on your conditions and what your plants are doing as to when you got to kind of say, okay, I better wait and move that in late fall after the plant has lost its leaves, or wait till the following spring prior to growth and do it then. So we can be still kind of working on that. General cleanup, You may have, there may still be leaves and things with all the wind and activity we've had that can just blow things around and stir things up, and so you may have tried to do it last fall. It was very difficult last fall to get all the leaves cleaned up. They were hanging on trees and shrubs, and when they did come down, we moved into winter, and that was the end of that. So you might be doing your final cleanups. Debris in the yard. A lot of times it's good to rake the yard in the spring, depending on where you are and what's there. But you can get leaves, and you can choose to do that or not. Some of that can be mulched, so you might have more delicate leaves that were broken down and kind of worked their way down in amongst the grass. That can actually, as long as it's not too much and it's not smothering it, you can actually let that there as organic matter, and then just let the grass grow up around that.
A lot of times in the springtime, people do two things to their lawns. They roll their lawns, and they de-thatch their lawns. Is one or the other of those more valuable, or is it a lawn-by-lawn basis?
Yeah, it's really lawn by lawn, depending on the activity on it and the length of time that it's been since that was done, and how aggressively you grow your yard. The more nitrogen, the more fertilizer you put on it, the more growth that you get. So that's not only in the top growth that you will cut, but it's also in the roots. And then that plant is, roots develop, they live, they perform their necessary needs, and then they'll die off. And so you've kind of got some constant changes going on there. New ones are developed and old ones die off, and so you can build up that thatch layer from that. Some of the like the lignins and things like that are in those plant parts take a long time to break down, and those are the parts that tend to build up and make that thatch layer. And right now you're not going, in most cases, not see any negative effects of that. It will be later in the year when we get warmer and hotter and drier, where that thatch layer dries out, and then it's very difficult to get that re-wetted again. And so then we can prevent the roots from getting water. Water will run off rather than get down through that thatch layer. So we can de-thatch. You might need to aerate.
I was going to say
another one.
Yes.
So the more activity you have on it, the more activity when the ground is moist. Greater compaction occurs when the ground's moist, as opposed to dry. So those conditions will warrant whether and stick a shovel down in the soil. Try to, even a piece of rebar or something like that, try to push that down in the soil or pound it down in the soil. Stick a shovel in the soil. How hard is it to go down into your soil? The tougher it is, if you need a jackhammer to get down in it, you've got compaction issues.
Okay, we've only got a minute left. Let's see if we can get this caller in. Good morning.
Hi, Bob. Question about the optimum amount of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to put in a garden when you're initially putting your plants in the ground.
Okay.
Really, we would preferably like to base that on soil test results for the plants that you're trying to grow. So if we do it based on that, we'll be in good shape. A lot of times we guess. We assume we need to put on lime every year. I'm seeing a number of soil test reports coming back with high pHs, and that's just from repeated use of, I need to put on some lime every year. Well, yeah, you maybe did for a while, but you don't anymore. So try to minimize the amount that you put on, especially when you're starting plants, and going back to basing, especially those phosphorus and potassium needs. Nitrogen's a little more prescriptive because there are ways to test nitrogen. However, it's a very changing nutrient because it can be a gas, it can be a liquid, and it can be in those fertilizer pearls and not dissolved yet. So it changes all the time. And so we have kind of, like for your grass plants, we need about 3 to 4 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year.
30 seconds.
So that's a little bit prescriptive. But the other ones, we really like to base that on what's there and what that crop
On
needs.
a soil test.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can do that right at your office, right?
We have the
soil test kit.
Yeah, you can pick up the kits there. They're $9, and you bag the soil up, send it through the mail, and within a week you'll have your results back.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.